Hi again, everyone. Well, I am excited to introduce my beautiful dear friend, Sue. Like Elizabeth said, you guys are definitely in for a treat. So I am going to read her bio. Need my glasses. Sue Frederick, lifelong intuitive and spiritual coach, is the author of Bridges to Heaven, True Stories of Loved Ones on the Other Side. I see your soulmate. I see your dream job, your divine lens in water oak, the happiness of longing. As a master numerologist, career and grief intuitive coach, ordained unity minister, she's taught hundreds of workshops for those who seek alignment with their soul's purpose and for those who are grieving. In her workshops and client sessions, she's witnessed the profound healing of slipping into your higher self for guidance and to connect with the loved ones on the other side. Sue believes we can all connect to our departed for healing conversations, and that our consciousness is much more expansive than we understand it in this limited physical world. Her work has been featured in the New York Times, CNN.com, Real Simple Yoga Journal, Natural Health and Complete Women magazines. So before I welcome Sue, I just wanted to say, please be certain to get any books that you want for the book signing tonight as soon as you can, so everyone's not racing in there at the same time. The book signing there will be one at 6:45 and then another one at 8:45. So let me welcome beautiful Sue.
Thank you, sweetheart. I have a mic. Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Yeah. It's an honor to be here because some of you know that my journey, my spiritual awakening actually began in 1979. And it was when my beautiful mountain climbing young husband, Paul, crossed over from cancer, and I held him in my arms and saw his spirit leave. I was 29. And up until that point, I had grown up Catholic, and then I had rejected all God consciousness ideas, as we do in our younger years. And then I pursued Native American spirituality, Buddhism, all sorts of things, trying to understand, what is God? Why am I here? And I couldn't find an answer that resonated as true. So 1979, my greatest soul agreement was with my husband, Paul, who at the very beautiful young age of 29, died in my arms. And people say, oh, that's so awful. No, it's not. All of us know that was my greatest gift of awakening. And the reason I'm telling you is because many of you are in the early stages of that kind of loss. And I can tell you that even in your deepest moments of pain, in your deepest moments of grief and doubt and cynicism, your soul is going to show up and grow when you are ready to open your heart again. And that brings me to the point of my talk, which is, what is required here on earth to live a good life, fulfill our soul mission, and grow as we agreed to grow here? One quality. That makes it sound easy, right? The quality is courage. Because here's the thing, when you lost your beloved, the world started telling you how to feel. Agreed? You should go to your priest, or you should go to your church, or you should start to get over this, right? And yet that higher self in you, the small voice, the beautiful voice of your soul, was always saying, wait a minute, there's no death. Life continues beyond the end of the body. And your departed was coming back and trying to show you that, whether it was in dream visions or in hearing his voice or her voice. And there was a part of you that wanted to go all in into that from the very beginning. And then there were those people around you going, well, you know, that's kind of crazy. You might need to take some medication so that you can get over that, what was called in my day, grief hysteria. Have any of you ever had that? Yeah, okay. Well, things are better now. That was before you were born. That was in 1980. But right away, when we start telling people, hey, you know, I'm having these signs from my child or signs from my departed husband, people, good intentional people, will say, well, I'm glad that makes you feel better. So courage is about saying, I choose, because it's a choice, to trust my heart and what it's telling me, even when the world tells me differently. It's just courage. Did you know that the word courage comes from the Latin root word cor, C-O-U-R, which means heart? Courage does not come from here. Your monkey mind is all about keeping you safe. So that mind is always saying, oh my goodness, you're in danger, shut down, don't trust what you don't know for sure is true. That's our monkey mind. Now, the Buddhists got it very right, and the Hindus too, a long time ago, when they taught meditation as a practice of quieting the monkey mind, because then the heart gets back in charge. It opens the heart the minute we quiet the mind. So let me take you back to that day in 1979. And I was just having this amazing conversation with William Peters, the author of the book about shared death experiences. So I want to tell you about my shared death experience. And I know that many of you have had these, and they are part of your proof of the divine. At the moment that Paul's spirit lifted up and left, not only did he show it to me vividly, but he talked to me and said, I'm free. And granted, I hadn't eaten or slept for a few days. I was exhausted, like many of you are when you go through grief. But I was instantly exalted into this space of higher consciousness. And I ran out in the hospital hallway where all of his friends were waiting. And I said, he's free of his body. It was so beautiful. And they were all like, oh, that's terrible. And they started crying. But I was in this exalted consciousness, and Paul was taking me there because he knew he had to show me something. He had to show me that the soul is the essence of who we are, and it never, ever dies. And so as he lifted me up, every time something would happen for the next 2 weeks, Paul was showing me, oh, well, that's meant to be. That's divine order. And he was showing me so many signs. And I had trouble eating. I had trouble sleeping. Those are classic experiences of the shared death experience. And eventually, when I crashed back into my body, I had to go through my grief because we're all human and divine. And there is the trick. Because if you have one foot in your body and your physical self, which you have to have down here, and one foot in your soul's awareness, you have to walk with both feet. So the juxtaposition today of David Kessler talking about grief and the need to cry, I'm all in with that. And then Dr. Mary Neal saying, and there is no death. That relationship continues. Both things are true. So many people will tell you that since, well, right after Paul died, I was starting to get back on my feet, and my lifelong girlfriend, Chrissy, died. And she came and gave me the most vivid awakening. So have you ever had that kind of childhood friend where you laugh like crazy with them all the time, that kind of giggling that makes your stomach hurt? Yeah. Well, that's what Chrissy was for me. We had gone to Convent of Mercy school together. And so the nuns were always chastising us because we would giggle in mass. I can feel Chrissy here. And she and I were always talking about love and relationships and how we were seeking love. And we were such close friends. And when I was marrying Paul Frederick, she was engaged to, this is the most bizarre thing, a man named in New York named Paul Frederick, different person completely. And as if that weren't enough signs, he broke her heart. He backed out of the wedding at the last minute. And my Paul left the planet, left the earth realm. So we were commiserating again, in sync with each other. And she came out and we went skiing together. I lived in Colorado then, and we went downhill skiing. And she fell, and it was a tiny bruise. And by the time we got her to the airport to go home, her body was covered in bruises, and many of you know what that means. It was very serious leukemia. And she was gone in a year, actually. But so that's the place in grief where you do give up. Because I know some of you have had 2 losses. You've lost 2 children, some of you even more. And so I really understand how that second whammy can come along just when you think you're going to be able to get out of bed and carry on. But there was such a gift in it for me. And that gift was that Chrissy kept coming back again and again as her hysterically funny self. In fact, the night that she crossed over, I was living in Mexico for a while teaching fitness. Remember, forgive me, it was the 80s. The headband, you know. And I was living in an apartment. There was no internet. There was really hard to make international phone calls. Chrissy was in California. And one night I thought she was in remission because she had been doing well. And one night I went to sleep, and Chrissy kept making me laugh all night long so hard that my stomach hurt. She was lifting me up and traveling with me, showing me different people we both knew, and just laughing and laughing and laughing with me, and kind of dropped me back in the bed in the morning. And I woke up going, wow, my stomach hurts from laughing. And I was with Chrissy. Oh my gosh. And finally, I got a call through to the States, and she had crossed over that night. So Chrissy and Paul together have this joint mission to wake me up because I'm pretty stubborn. And Paul was showing me all kinds of amazing spirit signs. I'll share some of those in a minute. But Chrissy would literally come back and counsel me about my terrible relationships that I got into after Paul crossed. Because have any of you ever lost your partner, your husband? Yeah, it's a different kind of grief. And one of the things it does to you is it makes it really hard to choose well in relationships from then on. I'm grateful because it took me 100 years, but I found my partner, Gene Malawani, when I was 50, and he's still my husband. So I'm very grateful for that. But I went through some years of terrible relationships. And so my most vivid memory is Chrissy coming, taking me to a dream vision, which we had all the time, standing on the balcony with me, overlooking the ocean. And she started rubbing my back, and she showed me a letter that one of the men I had been in love with had never really loved me. He had written it to someone else, and she was forcing me to read it. And as I read this letter, she rubbed my back, and this pain trauma came out of my body and rippled across the water. And she was purifying my soul of that trauma of loss of a partner. And as I turned to thank her, she was evaporating in the form that I identified as Chrissy. She was on to a new level of her journey. And don't worry, because I know some of you worry that your kids won't come back. They do both. Remember Mark Anthony talking about quantum physics and how time and space are happening all at once? So never think that your child has gone somewhere that you can't access. That is not true. They always come back in the form we recognize, especially when we need them or call out to them or just ask for a sign. Because everything is happening all at once, which is such a cool thing to think about. So imagine your life for a moment. You're in the divine realms, and you're between lifetimes, and it's right before you decide to drop into this lifetime. And you're meeting with your spirit guides, you're meeting with your council of elders, all the wise souls who have guided you through every lifetime. And you're saying to them, you know, I feel like everybody's passing me up in their growth. And I've been with my soul posse for a long time, and I feel like they're learning and growing more than me. And so your child steps forward, who's not a child, who's a soul, and says, well, I'll help you. Let's make an agreement. And you say, okay, well, what would that be? And the guides go, well, I don't know if you really want to do this because it's about devastating loss. And you go, wait, why do I have to go through that? And the guides say, because that's the only guaranteed path to waking up to your divine consciousness. When it's easy, we don't pay attention. And so your beloved child stood there in full soul form and looked at you, and you said, do you think we can do this? And that child said, I will do it for you and for my growth too, and for all of our soul posse. And so you all loved on each other and hugged on each other, and then you dropped in. And the ones who have been through the hardest devastations, the most loss, are the most powerful souls, brave souls, courageous souls, who agreed they wanted to grow and expand down here for the good of all. And it's always for the good of all consciousness. So when you're having your pain and your bad days, just remember, this loss was a gift to you from your most beloved child on the other side. And don't you want to make them proud? Now, don't worry, you still have a foot in the human. So let me just tell you about my approach to grief, because I've had a lot of grief and loss in my life, but I have never lost a child, and I honor all of you so deeply for being the brave souls and going through that. But what I will say is that you have to have your moments of being what I call our pitiful self. We all have our pitiful self. You should name that personality. Mine is called Sadie because she really is sad a lot, and she wants to stay in bed and watch sad movies. Like 1883, anybody saw that? I could watch that over and over because I just cry my heart out. And then I feel great. So your way of purging that grief and purging that pain is going to be your way to do it, but you have to do it. You can't run from that pain. I teach a meditation called the Break Your Heart Wide Open meditation, and I'll just share it briefly. When you wake up first thing in the morning, and it's really good before the sun even comes up, just as the sun is about to rise, there's a shift of energy. You just sit up and put your hand palm up in front of your heart chakra and just close your eyes for a moment and talk to God, consciousness, God, higher self, whatever you want to call it, and say, please help me feel this pain right now and move it through me and out of my heart chakra so I can offer it up for love. And so you literally just sit there going, help me feel it. And you sit in that pain for a minute, and you just start letting that grief memory come, and then watch it pour out through the palm of your hand and say, I offer this to God consciousness for highest good. And cry if you can. It's hard for some people to cry, and I understand that because we get very patterned as children. So if you can't cry, just try to feel that pain. And I guarantee you, the minute you've spent even just 5 minutes in the morning doing this when you're in your grief, you're going to be able to get up and go about your day without that heavy weight over your head. You know how you have a day where you feel like you're always on the verge of tears? Then cry it out in the morning and go have a great day. And then you may have to return to it at sunset, do it again. But this technique has gotten people through their worst and darkest days of grief. You got to feel it. And by purging that pain, you open yourself to the higher consciousness levels so that now you have a much clearer, more open channel to connect to your child. So again, courage to feel the pain and courage to sit with it for a minute. And then the next phase of your courage comes from believing in the unseen that all the skeptics say is not real. How many of you, of course, everybody have had signs from their departed that you're pretty 100% sure are real? Everybody, almost. Okay, everybody. So that is your holy business. That is your sacred practice, remembering that, experiencing it, but not begging for it. And here's the difference. When you say, oh, I'm just hoping for a sign, I'm trying to get a sign, you know, that it can't be that way, because spirit has to be lowering their vibration as we raise ours. So I tell my clients, just wake up in the morning and go, you know, hey, Paul, hey, Chrissy, I really have a question for you. And by the way, Chrissy, what should I wear when I do that talk? And just talk to them, because then you're assuming and knowing that they are with you and they will answer you and they will give you a sign. Don't worry and ask for it a certain way. Just, you know, what do they say? Fake it till you make it. Go around talking to those spirits, and one day their voice will be so loud, like you'll take an outfit out of the closet and Chrissy will go, hell no, girl. And then you know, okay, yeah, she's here. Guess I can't wear that. So make it more fun, and it will help you with your courageous healing. And the name of this talk is Proof of the Divine. And whenever I give this talk, I always say, nobody else can give you proof of the divine. You have to give yourself the courage to accept what's already coming to you as your proof of the divine. So I can say to a million people, hey, you know, Paul showed me his spirit, Chrissy kept me up laughing all night, and Chief Fool's Crow did a Native American ceremony with me, and I see his spirit still, etc. And you don't have to believe that. That's my story. But you each have your own story, your own experiences, that the more you embrace and cherish and share with others, we collectively shift our understanding here of life and death. And that's why this conference is the juiciest, buzziest, high vibration thing happening on this planet, because this is where we're showing that, talking about it, and doing it. You know, I was telling Carol, I was just ordained in June as a unity minister, and it was a long, hard road of lots of school. What I found that's so interesting is that I have been a spiritual seeker since I was a kid. And I've lived in a Hindu ashram. I mean, I have embraced every single path. And people say, well, which one is right? All of them. They all have an element of truth about God consciousness. And if your religion is making you feel diminished or like you can't share or talk about your departed spirit talking to you, then move over a little bit, dip your toe in something else that makes you comfortable. It could be unity, it could be meditation, it could be anything. Or if you have a Catholic priest who says, yeah, it's okay, we can talk about your departed child showing up, then that means you can stay there and be okay with it. But you have to go on your own spiritual journey to figure it out. And if you don't believe in anything, that's more important that you dip your toe in the water of every path. And sometimes I tell my cynical clients, okay, then here's your homework. You're going to go do a meditation class for 3 weeks, see how that affects you. You're going to go attend a unity church and listen to what they talk about. God is love, loving consciousness. You're going to go dip your toe in all of these places, read books about spirituality, and then come back and tell me what you think. And every single time they would say, well, you know, there are just some mysteries in life. And I'd go, great, that's a first step. That's a first step. Acknowledging that we don't really know how it works in our minds, but we do in our hearts, in the courageous heart. So a long time ago, I was writing a talk and I came across this amazing Hindu philosophy. And it said there are 4 paths that everyone can follow that will give them an experience of God. And I always say God consciousness because I don't see it as a person, more as a loving consciousness, but you put whatever words work for you. And so what are those 4 steps? So the first one I love, and they said selfless service. So think about it. Every time you decide to volunteer to be a caring listener for HPH, or you go and work at the food, the food bank or the homeless shelter, even for an hour a week, you are beginning to open your heart again. Every time you decide maybe you'll go sit at a hospice and hold the hand of someone who's grieving, you are opening your heart again. And I know that we are all here to use our pain as fuel to help others. In fact, the way I say it is, our greatest work offers to the world what we wish had been offered to us in our moment of greatest pain. So take a moment to think about that, because I know some of you think, well, I can have my spiritual life over here and then I can go to that job I don't like. Well, honey, you got to talk to me about that. Because I think when you've been through grief like you all have, your soul is going, I'm ready to reinvent, I'm ready to change, I'm ready to grow. I need meaningful work. And you all know that beautiful story of Rick and Beth Olson. They told us their story about the car accident killing both of their children, and now they're shamans and healers. But yes, it takes a while, so go at your own pace, but hold the vision, the possibility that someday when you're ready, you turn your pain into your gift for the world. The second step is meditation. Now, I've been talking about meditation for so long that it's just a little frustrating when people think that meditation is hard. So I'm just going to tell you right now, I'm giving you homework, because do you see this thing here? This is a mala. And some of you may have grown up Catholic and you used a rosary, right? So the easiest way on earth to quiet your mind, and you'll get so addicted. Uh-oh, I'm about to pull my microphone out. Never mind. You'll get so addicted to doing this because it'll bring you so much peace and so much calm. You simply hold this in your hand and just say either a prayer or a sacred word like Om Namah Shivaya on every bead, and just sit 10 minutes. But the important thing is you're using your hand to move the beads, because that keeps you grounded in doing this and not just thinking. Because what you're doing is shutting down the mind for a few minutes so that the heart can take the lead. And if you could do this every day for 2 weeks, 10 minutes, you would love it so much, because you would find that when you come out of that process of just using sacred sound and beads, all those problems go away. Your heart opens. You just feel like you had a beach vacation. And so then if you're having an off day, you go, oh my God, I need to go sit down and just do some mantra for a while. Because it's not about trying to have an enlightened experience. It's not about trying to have some kind of awareness or mystical insight. That's how we've misinterpreted meditation. It's simply quieting our crazy monkey minds. And yes, we need our minds, of course. We need our left brain and our right brain. But the truth is that your left brain, your logic mind helps you be competent here, but it stops your spiritual growth at every turn. And you all know that's true. Whereas the right brain part connected to the heart and the soul is your higher consciousness, your higher self. When you were a child, and probably your children as well, you were completely in tune with that small sacred voice inside. And when other people told you to be logical and follow rules, you didn't want to. You wanted to just keep having your dreams and your imagination and your right brain influence. And this culture requires that you change that you become left brain, logical, dominant. And that's how you get through school. That's how you get a job. And then grief happens and you have to reprogram it. And that's what we do when we talk to spirit, when you go see mediums, when you check and look for your signs, when you meditate, you are shifting from the left brain to the right brain. And you all also know that there's other ways to shift as well, whether it's writing, creativity. I've been a writer, a professional writer my whole life. And I can't even think about something painful until I sit down and start writing. It's how I pour the clarity through me and it gets me back into my higher self. So whatever it is for you, it could be painting, it could be walking in nature. That also has to be a big part of your life because that's where you get your personal proof of the divine. And here's the disappointing thing about our world. There have been scientists like even Dean Radin, who spent more than 30 years proving in the lab that intuition is real and that, there are things beyond the physical, and the quantum physicists have been teaching this. And Mark Anthony showed us new research last night that's so exciting. But do you think the scientific world is listening? They say sometimes that it can take 50 years for a new research idea that's proven in research to become mainstream. 50 years, you don't need to wait. You have to trust your own heart. And here's how I feel about cynicism, because I've been a numerologist since 1980. Wait till you see how your Southern engineering relatives roll their eyes at that. That was hard for me, honestly. Everybody wants to be loved and accepted. And guess who now comes to me for numerology readings? My family. But that's only because through a whole lot of heartbreak, I finally found the courage to just speak my truth. And that's how it is for all of us. We will be dismissed by people around us. We will be dismissed by family of origin for being woo-woo, but we are claiming the woo. Because all of you know that's what's real. That is what's real. And when people say, so where's the proof of the divine? It's in your woo-woo experiences. And until science gives you permission to believe that, the world won't change its mind, but you can change your mind. And I am so blessed because I get to do numerology with clients all the time. Let me tell you, the numerology thing is when Paul died, I was so angry because aren't we angry when our loved ones cross? That is a natural human response. Like, what the heck? Like, why is everybody else having a happy life? Why is life going on, right? Do you remember when your child crossed and the next day you were like, how is life still happening? Because yours has stopped. So, so many feelings in grief are important, but I've also said that anger is our friend sometimes. And what I mean by that is anger can sometimes just get you out of bed. Even if you want to go argue with somebody about something, it's getting you out of bed. It's giving you some energy. It's starting to get you back to the world. So in that process, a caring friend said, I want you to do a numerology session with somebody. And she gifted it to me. And I was kind of poo-poo to the woo-woo, right? Like, don't come in and tell me with your numbers why my beautiful young husband suffered and died and why I'm still here. And she did. She came in and explained it, our soul agreements, my soul mission, what I'm still here to do, what Paul was teaching me, what our agreement was, all through numerology. And that's a special take on numerology because many numerologists don't look at it that way. She changed my life in that conversation. So from 1980 on, I've studied every part of it that I can, and I've distilled it into what resonates as true and helpful for me. And in grief, it is profoundly amazing to understand that your departed loved one had a specific soul mission and a soul agreement with you, that it was not random, that it was not some terrible, yes, it was terrible and painful, but it was also an agreement for your highest good and for your growth. And often those children who cross early, they are sensitive, highly evolved souls. Many of them are master souls. They aren't coming in here to stay forever down here. This place is really hard. They're coming in to drop in and wake us up. And gosh, aren't we grateful for that? Rather than saying it was horrible and fixating on the horrible suffering. I was so glad that, who was it today? I think it was Mary Neal talked about how suffering is not real. Paul, my husband, came back and told me that right after in so many ways. And recently even, he came in a dream vision and lifted his shirt. He had had all kinds of surgeries and his abdomen was scarred. And he lifted his shirt when he was in my dream vision and said, suffering is not real. All these people grieving who think that their loved one suffered so much, they weren't in the body. They didn't feel it. And so I've heard that from so many spirits, I can't even tell you. And here's a fun thing. My father, when he was dying from cancer, it was in Mobile, Alabama, where I had to spend part of my childhood. And he had been diagnosed, and I knew he was leaving, and I had already lost a number of people by then. And so you just get to a place where you're like, okay, baby, I'll help you, whatever you need. And you don't resist. And so my father was dying and my whole family was resisting and denying and everything. And he was in the hospital. And one day I said, Dad's going to cross today. I can feel his spirit is ready. Well, you can imagine how my Southern family felt about that, all the Catholics and everything. And they went, Sue, go home and take it to the grandchildren. It's Beth's turn to be here with Dad or whatever. And I was like, of course, I'm the one person who could really help Dad, but that just freaks him out. And they refused to give him the DNR orders, do not resuscitate. And don't be shocked. There's a whole lot of people in this world still who think if someone is dying from cancer, you still need to resuscitate them. You still need to do all these things because death is the most terrible thing in the world. And now you all know better. So we're in the hospital. I go home with the grandkids, get them down. And here's your little secret. What is the first thing I did once the kids went to sleep? Sit down and meditate, because it quieted my mind, my anger, my worry, all this stuff. And instantly I'm sitting there meditating. And so my dad suddenly appears more vividly than you look to me right now. And he's right in front of me. And he's young and healthy. He looks like 40 years younger. And when he was young and healthy, we'd always say we needed to send him to clown school because he was such a goofball and he was always doing ridiculous, silly things. And we were just like, oh, he's Dad, just go to clown school and leave us alone. And in this vision, and we hadn't seen him like that for about 10 years. And so in this vision, he's right in front of me and he is his goofy, silly clown dad that I hadn't seen. And so I'm laughing with him at first, going, oh, Dad, what are you doing? And then I'm like, oh, Dad, what are you doing? And I came out of my meditation and picked up the phone. And my brother Jim answered. And I said, Dad just came to me. He's out of his body. And Jim said, word for word, well, Sue, I guess you are psychic because they're doing CPR on him. He had a heart attack and there's bedlam in the hospital room. And I said, don't worry, Dad isn't there. He is so out of there. And that's another thing for all of you to know is that even in the final moments of your loved one's journey, they weren't there. They were already coming to check in on you, to help you deal with it, to see their loved ones. Or like Chrissy did, coming to laugh with you all night if you'll let them. Coming to fly you around and show you things from the divine realms if you'll let them. And I know you will, and I know you do. And there's another step. Yes. Conversations with God. Now that's a tricky wording right there. And the way I want you to think of it is conversations with God doesn't mean that we're talking to a father figure who we are begging forgiveness for, or any of those traditional religion things. Imagine God, just for a moment, humor me, as a loving, powerful consciousness of great force that launched this universe into existence for highest good of all and navigates everything, creating divine order. And I went and studied ministry school so I could understand how you can find that truth in the Bible. And you can go visit a Unity church and ask them to interpret the Bible for you metaphysically, and it's all there. So when you are feeling that you want to talk to God consciousness, go ahead, but don't plead or beg. Just say, oh God, you know, I have got to be on a high energy trip today, so I really need you to pep up my energy and help me lift up. And departed loved ones start coming in and making you laugh, and God consciousness fills you with love. Because it's not all about us having to do this alone. And that's the great thing when grief hits. You may have felt you were all alone at times in your life before. And once you have a child in spirit or a very close beloved in spirit, you never have to feel alone again. Any moment that you need them, even if you just need to feel better, they are going to help you. And that is how God consciousness works. So conversations, that's just a lot of fun. That's like, hey, today, and I've done this a lot during the conference, and I hope you guys do this kind of thing, where I'm really tired and I'm really hungry and I don't know where I'm going to eat or something, and I can't even think about where I should go. And I'm just walking and I go, okay, Spirit, guide me into exactly where I need to go, seeing people exactly I need to see and finding the perfect meal. And you have to get rid of any expectations of it or ideas of what should happen. And suddenly you're walking down a corner and there's one table left. And it's yours, and you sit down, and there's one thing on that menu that feels exactly right. But we don't have to feel we have to control all of this, that we have to trust the divine order. How many of you feel that in these last 3 days, you have so many times had synchronicities where you suddenly run into somebody that you've needed to talk to or wanted to meet? And it's this place with the high vibration, it's happening constantly. So your little homework tonight is, hey, there's a banquet tonight. I'm not sure where and when I want to go and who I want to sit with. So I'm going to trust divine order and my higher self to put me exactly where I'm supposed to be and just flow with it. I did a whole trip in England once based on that, where all I had was a rail pass. And I would just wake up in the morning and think, okay, what feels right today? Oh, Liverpool. Okay, let's go to Liverpool. And that was the most magical trip of my life. You have to be alone to do that because usually your spouse is like, what, Liverpool? But the more you're alone and you're trusting that voice in yourself and letting it guide you, that's your conversation with God. And it always comes through in love. It always comes through in empowerment. When I first started doing this intuitive work a long time ago, I remember people would say, well, do you see anything bad in my future? No, I don't look for that. I've made a deal. I am only going to the highest realms of God consciousness for my information, because everything here is a combination of free will and your divine destined soul mission. So let's just say you're not growing the way you intended. Well, your soul may have made a plan B that required, being sick and home, like COVID. I keep thinking COVID was like a plan B for humanity. Like everybody go home and shut up for a while and just regroup. Okay. And so being home alone and having to get out of all the busyness, we get back in touch with that small, still voice. And that's where our proof of the divine lives. And every illness you can look at as a nudge from your soul to get you to pay attention to something or perhaps do something differently. And there's many famous people like Louise Hay who've written tons of books about that. But even a backache has a specific thing, a guidance for your soul. I just had a client she's been my client for, more than 10 years, I think. I love her so much. And she's a very spiritually evolved soul, but she's been running a business that's kind of been exhausting her. And a year ago at this time, she was diagnosed with terrible leukemia and really given a grim prognosis. So that courageous soul, the first thing she wanted to do was come and do a soul regression session with me, because I'm also a soul regression therapist. And I said, yeah, let's go see what your guides and your counsel have to say about this. And so I put her in a meditative state, and she went on her own journey into the divine, and she met with her counsel, and she looked at her guide and said, why am I having this illness? And the first thing her guide said was, what illness? Your soul has no illness. And then she said, okay, then what do I need to change? And they said, in their own words, in their own way, you've got to change your life. That business is not your true path, because she's really meant to be a spiritual healer teacher in her own way. And so she went after that session and started putting her business for sale, not knowing what would happen. And it's now a year later, and this week her business is sold and she got a complete remission diagnosis. No cancer anywhere. And I'm not saying that we don't choose illness and we have to stick with it, because sometimes we do. Paul chose it as a path of awakening. Sometimes a soul will choose physical suffering as a path of enlightenment. But other times a soul will choose an illness to wake them up and redirect. And only you can know which that is. So I asked Paul a lot in the years since he left, why did you suffer so much? He had colon cancer. He was 34. He suffered more than any person I have ever seen. And that trauma stayed in me. And that's what I had to release, because once he left his body, he was no longer in that. And so I had years of lots of Kundalini yoga and spiritual practice to try to move that out of me, because I was stuck in those painful memories. And so I've had angry conversations sometimes with Paul, like, Paul, you're a rock climber. Like, why couldn't you have just fallen? Like that would have been easy and clean, what I call a clean exit, And he's told me, he said, because I had negativity in my soul, anger, and certain things that had become patterns. And every time I would incarnate, I would just keep recreating those patterns of anger and cynicism and pain. And I needed a big wake up call to burn through that negativity. And he chose the path of, and think about Jesus Christ, our great teacher here. He also chose a path of crucifixion. He knew what he was going through to burn. He did it to burn up the negativity of humanity consciousness and show us a higher way. And Buddha has their own story, and all the other paths have their own story. And Paul did it to break some deep patterns. And by the time he left his body, he was pure love, absolute pure love. So that is why life looks random and chaotic, but there is always a higher understanding available to you, your own proof of the divine. So the other last thing is, open-mindedness. Now, I love this, because how many of you feel like there's been times in your life when you've been cynical, right? And don't we think that being cynical means we're being smarter than everybody else and we're not going to get fooled, right? That's what our mind tells us. But the opposite is true, because when we're living from the heart, open-hearted, our intuition is guiding us so that we'll absolutely know what is true, rather than thinking about what could this really mean. We are trusting our heart. And I grew up in a very cynical family, and I was cynical in my 20s especially. And what I know now is that cynicism is fear. We are afraid to trust what our heart knows is true when we're being cynical. And the minute we open our heart, our courageous heart, and we begin to have our own proof of the divine, then everything changes and we are living courageously, and we are closing down the cynicism, and we are living our best life. So if somebody's really cynical to you about your beliefs, just love on them, because they're just not ready to have courage and to open their hearts. I think it's time to say goodbye. And I just want to thank you all so much. And if you have any questions, I'll be at the book signing tonight. And it's been such an honor talking to all of you today and getting to know you and your beautiful stories. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.